Let me share with you a case I handled that I call a urology nightmare. And it truly was, and you'll understand why in just a moment. 37-year-old man was having difficulty urinating, and he went to his urologist. And as part of the procedure to open up the urethra, that's the tube that leads urine out through the penis, he did a procedure known as a cold knife urethrotomy. And that sounds as painful as the term is, okay? And you know, but that's something that had to be done. So they actually go in and remove with a knife this scar tissue that had built up in this tube leading the urine out. But that's a short-term solution. And a couple of months later, this problem arose again. He had difficulty urinating. So the doctor again did the same procedure. And again, it's a short-term solution. So now the problem came back. And the doctor says, you know what? I have a great idea. We're going to put in a device known as a stent, a wire mesh stent into your urethra, into that tube. And here's what it's designed to do. It's a coil, it's a mesh coil that's spring-loaded. And once we insert it into that tube, it will open up with the purpose of keeping that tube open. And it'll allow the urine to pass through freely. Now, the patient was reassured by the doctor, told that this was a wonderful procedure, this is something that could happen, and it's something that's going to benefit him. And that's exactly what the patient agreed to. So, during the course of the procedure, the doctor put in this spring-loaded implant into the urethra and realized, you know what? He needs another one right behind it, so I'm going to put in two of them. That was, in our opinion, clear departures from good and accepted medical practice. And I'll tell you why in just a moment. What this patient was never told was that these devices were meant to be put in to elderly gentlemen, people who would no longer be able to have erections. Because every time a young man would have an erection, it would cause unbearable, excruciating, agonizing, unending pain. Absolutely horrendous. And when you put in these stents, what they are designed to do is to go in and become literally embedded within the tube so that the skin cells now become and hold this in place. It's supposed to be permanent. They call that epithelialization, so that the stent doesn't move and the opening stays open. So what was the problem here? Well, this young man was not elderly. He was 37, had a family, had a wife, and every time he had an erection, he had such unbelievable, excruciating pain, he wanted to kill himself. Honest to God, he never had a problem before, never had a psychiatric problem. The doctor's notes, and this was remarkable, indicates patient is in such pain, he states he wants to kill himself. And this happened over and over again. It was unbearable. So finally, the doctor said to him, you know what? After 2 months, said, I want to take you back into the hospital, and under anesthesia, I'm going to try and move those stents. Let's see if we can get you some relief. This was mistake number 2. Okay, because remember, I told you those things are designed to become permanent and implanted in the urethra. So now, under anesthesia, the doctor goes and tries to remove or move it in the position. And as he tries to do that, guess what? It doesn't move because it's now embedded within the skin. So he starts to pull out strand by strand of each of these metal wire meshes that start ripping off. And as you can imagine from what I'm describing to you, again, as painful as I'm telling you now, this was horrendous. He destroyed this entire man's urethra as he's pulling out each of these pieces of metal, so that it looked like an explosion had gone off inside the tube that takes urine out. Needless to say, this man needed to have massive reconstructive urological surgery where they had to revise his entire urethra. And you have to ask yourself, what happens to the urine during the time that this surgery is happening and he's healing? They had to create something known as a urinary diversion. Urine has to come out somewhere. And where did it come out? They had to make a hole between his anus and his scrotum. So every time he needed to urinate, he had to sit down like a woman, go to the bathroom, and this went on for 18 months until his urethra was healed up. So when I tell you that this was a urology nightmare, I'm truly telling you this was devastating. And we were able to settle this very successfully at mediation. But the amazing thing, the amazing thing was, now listen to this. The defense argued throughout the entire mediation, throughout the entire litigation, this was a judgment call on behalf of the doctor. that using these stents was an acceptable procedure. And you know what? We said you're absolutely right. It is an acceptable procedure if you're over the age of 65 and you no longer have the ability to maintain an erection. Then you're okay. But on top of that, you've not only used something in a man that should never have had it, but you put it in the wrong place, too far down, so that now when he had the erection, it was excruciating and unbearable. So the judgment call raised as a defense, where you have a doctor who says, no, it's acceptable. As long as you have medical experts to come in and testify that that particular procedure, using that technique, was a departure from good and accepted care, you're going to be on good ground when you make out your case, and now you present your case to the jury.